Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to discuss the Bungie leaks and layoffs that began earlier this week, along with why I don't think the company's alleged downturn is as surprising as it might initially seem. For those unaware of the still unfolding situation, on October 30th, Jason Schreier, more or less the undisputed go-to when it comes to breaking developer and publisher-related scoops, revealed that Bungie was going through a series of layoffs as part of a larger restructuring effort on behalf of their parent entity, Sony. These cuts came a little over a year after their acquisition was finalized in July 2022, part of which included a $1.2 billion employee retention fund and promises from Bungie's management that the purchase wouldn't result in any layoffs. So much for that, huh? In an article published later that day, Schreier also revealed that Bungie had internally announced a delay in the release of Destiny 2's ultimate expansion, The Final Shape, to summer 2024. In addition, the release date for their recently announced extraction shooter Marathon, the company's only non-Destiny title since the first game was released in 2014, was also being pushed out further, now slated to hit the market in 2025. The news was immediately followed by a slew of public statements on social media by now former Bungie employees, confirming they had been let go by the company. These departures included prominent player-facing individuals like community manager Liana Rupert and social media head Griffin Bennett, along with dozens of others from various disciplines including art, legal, and quality assurance, who confirmed they had also been let go. Others chimed in on the situation as well, like former Destiny 2 community manager DMG, who pointed towards poor management as the root cause of the situation, along with Bungie employees who managed to survive the culling, like fellow CM Cosmo, who referred to the day as his worst at Bungie by far. The layoffs seemed to spare no one, as employees with more than 10 years of tenure at the company were let go. But this would turn out to only be the start. The hits kept on coming, as the very next day it was confirmed that two Destiny and Halo legends, Michael Salvatore and Lorraine McLeese, who had been with Bungie since their earliest days and were responsible for helping build the company up to its respected stature, had also been let go. If two of Bungie's oldest OGs, who created some of gaming's finest soundtracks and designed the god Pillar of Autumn, were deemed expendable, who wasn't? Things continued going from bad to worse as Paul Tassi revealed additional information from his sources at the company, stating that the layoff decisions were made by Bungie management, and not Sony, as some had been speculating. Those laid off were left with only a single day of benefits in some cases, and many had unvested shares in the company due to the Sony acquisition that, if they left Bungie for any reason, including termination, would then be transferred back to the company. This meant that anyone laid off who was expecting a nice little payday thanks to those shares was now out of luck, with Bungie conveniently taking the value intended for those employees and absorbing it themselves. The icing on top of this monstrous cake was further reporting from Jason Schreier, whose sources expanded on an unbelievably grim situation. Around 100 employees, or roughly 8% of the company, had been let go by management after Bungie missed their projected revenue targets by a whopping 45%. Something absolutely unheard of and frankly unconscionable. How does a company miss projected revenue by nearly 50%, you might wonder? I'll tell you how. Management sets completely unrealistic goals to make the company's outlook appear strong, and when those unrealistic goals shockingly can't be achieved, they axe a bunch of employees who had nothing to do with setting those unachievable expectations in the first place. Totally respectable behavior. His sources also reported a decline in Destiny 2 player retention after the game's latest expansion, Lightfall, was largely a dud. Its next expansion, The Final Shape, had yet to receive the glowing internal praise that the studio was expecting, hence its delay to allow for more time spent polishing it up prior to release. If Schreier's reporting was the icing, further information released by IGN was the cherry on top. Reporting from Rebecca Valentine revealed further dysfunction inside the studio, including all-time lows in player sentiment towards Destiny 2 and middling pre-orders for The Final Shape. With clear indications that its community was unhappy, employees reportedly went to Bungie's management and begged them for support and resources to address these concerns, but were promptly told to f*** off and let things continue to fester. I don't know about you, but that sounds like an absolutely wonderful work environment to me. Perhaps the most damning and disgusting nugget of info was that Bungie's CEO, Pete Parsons, told the company's surviving employees that the right people had been kept on the team amidst these layoffs, rubbing salt in the wound for those who had just been let go, along with further depleting whatever morale was left amongst those who remained. Even as a Destiny player who's largely drifted away from the franchise over the last couple of years, these 2 days of reporting were simply heartbreaking. Seeing people from Bungie who had come to deeply respect for their efforts in making Destiny 2 the best it could be tossed aside like scraps, no longer fit for Bungie's faltering vision of the game's future, made me sick. Once the dust had somewhat settled, although I highly doubt this is the last we'll be hearing about Bungie's internal woes, and I sat down to collect my thoughts on the situation. One simple question kept popping into my mind. Is anyone really that surprised by what's transpired here? Bungie's track record of abhorrent mismanagement speaks for itself, and dates all the way back to the earliest days of Destiny 1. Back in October 2015, Jason Schreier once again put out a story revealing a complete and total breakdown in the creation of the first Destiny game, a messy and convoluted process that involved rebooting its story from the ground up barely a year prior to release, which led Joe Staten, one of the minds behind much of the original Halo Trilogy's events, and the man directing a vision for what Destiny 1's story was supposed to look like, to leave the company entirely. Per Schreier's article, Bungie's senior leadership didn't like what they saw from Staten's D1 story supercut, which led them to initiate a complete reboot, and we all know how well that turned out. There's even more from Schreier's expose that contributed to Destiny 1's poor launch state, but I don't have time to explain why I don't have time to explain. If you know, you know. Now you'd think after scrapping and reworking Destiny 1's framework in less than 2 years leading up to the game's release, Bungie would have learned a thing or two about how to manage their resources effectively and produce a coherent product that fans would enjoy from the get-go. Unfortunately, we all know now that wasn't the case, and Destiny 2 ended up being Strike 2 for the company, who just couldn't seem to get their act together. During an interview with the Destiny Tracker podcast at the end of 2017, the bane of Bungie's existence, Jason Schreier, once again exposed a convoluted development process and troubled timeline for creating vanilla Destiny 2, an effort that, by Bungie's own admission, turned out so poorly that it almost killed off the franchise entirely. Schreier explained that, in a shockingly similar situation to the first game, Destiny 2 had gone through a similar reboot a mere 16 months prior to its release, giving the development team a year and a half to transform it into what fans were eventually given. A product similar to Destiny 1 in that, once the new shine wore off, it was significantly worse than what had been expected. We are going to do a drip feed of smaller stuff, and we're going to put up the Eververse, sell microtransactions, and make money that way, said Schreier, quoting his sources, and once again hammering home the fact that Bungie, not Activision, were to blame for Destiny 2's drip-fed content model and egregious microtransactions. Two things that any remaining players will know have only gotten worse as the years have dragged on. While many people have seemingly forgotten these missteps in light of content like The Taken King, Forsaken, and Witch Queen, arguably the 3 best expansions Bungie has ever released for Destiny, there's clearly an identifiable pattern at play here. Management completely botches whatever project they're working on, forces their employees to drive themselves into the dirt picking up the slack and reworking things to their liking, and Bungie then manages to sometimes spit out a successful product that resonates with players, but that more often than not falls completely flat and requires years of post-launch effort to bring up to community standards. So, in light of all the information coming out about layoffs, missed revenue projections, and anemic player engagement, the question I keep asking is after 3 huge swings and 3 major misses, Destiny 1, Destiny 2, and Lightfall, why is anyone out there still surprised Bungie's management can't get their act together? The biggest questions raised by these events revolve around the future of Destiny 2, Marathon, and Bungie as a whole. With lagging player engagement and lackluster pre-orders leading up to what is meant to be Destiny 2's ultimate expansion, does Bungie have the grit to pull off a miracle once again? Or how about 2 of them? While not officially confirmed at the time this video goes live, Schreier's reporting indicates the final shape won't release until June 2024, 4 months after its original February release window, and Marathon won't be out until 2025 at the earliest. So, what exactly is their plan for the next 2 to 3 years? With a depleted workforce and morale amongst remaining employees at rock bottom, can Bungie expect the same level of tenacity and dedication when it comes to righting the ship for Destiny 2's final Light and Darkness expansion? Funnily enough, before these layoffs occurred, it's reported that P. Parsons rallied the company's employees together for the final push, only to lay off almost 10% of his company a few weeks later. I'm sure that's instilled plenty of confidence in those who managed to keep their jobs. This time around. Then we come to Marathon, Bungie's foray into the extraction shooter genre, an already niche area of gaming that's dominated by existing titles like Escape from Tarkov and The Hunt Showdown. By the time Marathon releases in 2025, if it doesn't slip further behind, will there still be enough interest in that market? Will it still be profitable, or even exist? How many times have we seen things like Hyperscape, Ghost Recon Frontline, or Hyenas come along, chasing a trend or fad that hit its peak in popularity years ago, has an established audience dedicated to existing games, and doesn't have room for another copy-pasted entry, leading to the quick and untimely demise of these trend chasers? And, even if Marathon manages to stumble across the finish line, who's to say it's going to last? How can anyone look at Bungie's philosophy and approach to supporting Destiny 2? Don't overdeliver, stuff the game full of microtransactions, decimate the entire PvP team by moving them to work on other projects without replacing them, and feel confident that Marathon will turn out any differently. All of this criticism would have been valid before these leaks unfolded, but now those questions are more relevant than ever before. How can anyone, whether you're an existing Destiny fan, someone looking forward to trying out Marathon, or just an old school Bungie supporter who's been in love with their game since Halo, Myth, and Oni, have any faith that the company's management, those same people who oversaw the incredibly troubled production of Destiny 1, Destiny 2, and who are now in charge of Marathon, will be able to right the ship and turn things around moving forward? As someone who skipped over Lightfall after being burned by Witch Queen and the year of content that followed, I've often debated on whether or not I'll play the final shape. At this point, I'm not really sure what I'll do. All I know is that Bungie had already lost me as a paying customer, and after learning what we know now about the company's behavior and trajectory, it's going to be a hard sell to part me from any more of my money moving forward. Even before it began, 2023 was seen as a year with potential to be the best for gamers in recent memory. An incredible lineup of must-play titles: Tears of the Kingdom, Starfield, Baldur's Gate 3, Sea of Stars, Spider-Man 2, and Armored Core 6, just to name a few, all but ensured this would be a year for gamers to look back on fondly as one of the best ever. The unfortunate truth, however, is that while we as video game consumers might remember this as one of the best years in gaming history, the people who worked so hard to develop many of those same games will not. Even before the full scope of Bungie's layoffs became apparent, a tally began circulating online. Over 6,000 game developers had lost their jobs in 2023. Now, we can add 100 more to that disgusting number. When these games are raking in hundreds of millions of dollars, how can we justify this as one of the best times for gaming when so many of the people who work tirelessly, day in and day out, often through brutal periods of crunch, to provide us with these awesome experiences, are left out in the cold, looking for new work, while company management somehow escape from these economic woes unscathed, often enjoying fat bonuses and extra compensation thanks to the blood, sweat, and tears of those employees that they'll happily turn around and fire in the blink of an eye. Yes, Destiny fans, potential Marathon fans, and Bungie fans all lost this week. But what we've lost, the uncomfortable feelings of anger and disappointment about delays and bad business practices, pale in comparison to what those former Bungie employees are feeling right now. Scared, helpless, and betrayed. Despite how some might feel about their social media posts, the tweets and cries of Bungie that popped up when things seemed to be going well, it was never in doubt that those people truly cared about the product they were producing, put massive amounts of effort into their jobs, and loved the gaming community they worked so hard to support. Now imagine giving all of that time and effort to a company you believed in so deeply, that spouted off platitudes about being a family and taking care of their own, only for management to turn around, spit in your face, and give you a nice kick out the door, while stealing some of your future earnings to boot. There are plenty of losers in this situation, but the only ones truly worth considering are the employees who lost their jobs, their livelihoods, their sense of security, and their plans for the future, which likely included many more years spent working at a company they thought would have their backs. My heart goes out to every single Bungie employee that lost their job this week, the thousands more that already found themselves in the same situation earlier this year, and many more who will likely find themselves facing down the barrel of unemployment in the future thanks to the mismanagement, greed, and disgusting practices of those at the top of the food chain, most of which will somehow escape from these situations totally unscathed, while those same employees they profess to care so deeply about are tossed aside without a second thought. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more gaming content, and let me know your thoughts on Bungie's situation and the company's future in the comments below. You're a real one, and I appreciate you. Catch you later, homies.